The other day, I jumped on the 2016 trend, which, if you haven't seen it, it is basically people going through the archives back to 2016, a decade ago, and reflecting on the year that was. And for me, oh, it was pretty rough. It was pretty rough, if I'm honest. 2016 was the hardest year of my life, rolled into 2017. And it took me a while to decide whether I was going to do it or not because of all of the feelings that came up. But one of the things that made me laugh as I was reflecting on how much I have changed to the point my entire life is different. I am a completely different human. If you had have met me a decade ago and to see me now, you would be like, you are not the same person. I am, but I'm not. But there was one thing that made me laugh and like big belly laugh. And that was how resilient I thought I was. And yes, I was resilient from the point of view I had lived through a lot of trauma. I had survived a lot of trauma. But when I think about it, I was more detached than I was resilient. So, to kind of break this down, let's get really clear on what resilience means. What is resilience? If you look it up, or the definition is resilience is the psychological capacity to adapt, recover, and bounce back, if you will, from adversity, trauma, or significant stress. It involves maintaining mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility, allowing yourself to navigate challenges and grow stronger. To me, now, today, 2026, resilience is being able to move through challenging times in a way that you honor, embrace, and encompass everything that comes up and every part of you, your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions. In doing this, you increase your capacity to hold and also grow as a human. Basically, using trauma or challenges as a way to grow and expand more. I used to think that being resilient meant never being bothered by anything. Being strong, being tough, not being too emotional or too sensitive, being that go to person, being the overachiever, being the person that just like, yep, I'm over it. And when I think about my time in the police force, I thought I had resilience nailed. I legitimately was like, I've got this. I was the go to person. I was the reliable one. I was the one that they asked to train people. I was the one who had brilliant paperwork so I could I took on more work. I was the one that just got shit done. Mind you, in most places, it took quite a while for men to see me as an equal as opposed to an arrogant upstart. It was actually a real barrier um, around, you know, when you're a woman and you're confident versus when you're a man and you're confident. That's a whole nother episode. And maybe I should do an episode on that. Let me know if you want me to. And then life came tumbling down around me, like actually tumbling down. And I realized that I wasn't resilient at all. I wasn't resilient. Yes, I had survived, but I wasn't resilient. Resilience and embracing resilience means moving through things and being able to thrive, not survive. I had so much shit to sort out, so much healing to do. And I realized that I didn't actually have my shit together as much as I thought. And when I say that, there's a part of me that's like, bullshit. Bullshit from the point of view of, you didn't have your shit sorted out, but to everybody else, you did. There was like this little part of me, this secret part of me that I kept closed that no one else saw and I didn't show to anyone very intentionally, but everyone else thought I had my shit sorted out. And what that looked like is bypassing certain things, dismissing certain things, suppressing everything. It it was like living on autopilot. It was me going through the motions, but not allowing myself to feel. Honestly, that's probably the easiest way. So there was only two times I cried when I worked in the police force. And one was when a kitten got hurt, and another was a triple fatality, a car accident. And it was only speaking to family members that got me. And I saw a lot of stuff when I was in the police force. They were the only two times. I was so detached. And, I was proud of that. I was kind of, you know, internally, because no one knew what had happened to me, internally, I was proud of the fact that I'd survived all of this and didn't bother me. And the other part that no one saw was that I avoided the things that I knew would bother me, very blatantly ignore them. We used to talk about where we wanted to go, what we wanted to do in the police force. And one of my things was I could never work at SOCIT, which is sex crimes and child abuse. People, and I think it's a fairly common response. People didn't know it was because of what had happened to me. I said I didn't want to go to domestic violence because it was boring. People didn't know that I had lived in a domestic violent relationship. So I put on this brave face, claiming it as resilience and toughness, when it wasn't. It was avoidance. And during that time, like, how did I feel? I think I talked myself into being fine. I talked myself into being like, I'm great, I'm good. And, sometimes I was. I talk about this being like I hit rock bottom, and I did. And I was so detached and desensitized and all of this. And that is all true. But that doesn't mean that I wasn't happy at times. But I didn't know the level of happiness that I know now. Mine was this external, extroverted joy, happiness. But really, what I felt was nothing. There was kind of just, there were ups and downs, but I limited how sad I could feel, which then automatically meant that I put a cap on how good I could feel. And so it's this really interesting balance of nothingness. And even that, like saying I didn't feel anything. Whenever I do energy coaching or breath work for myself, or I take my clients through it, I get them and I go to a place of neutrality where we feel nothing, where we're weightless, where time stands still. And that's what we do. But the neutrality that I embrace now is so different to what it used to be, because the neutrality I embrace now is comes from a place of wholeness, comes from a place of being more than. Whereas back then it was nothing, cut off, detached, emotionless, walls were up. So instead of it being, I kind of think about it now where if I talk about neutrality, it's just kind of I am part of everything. I am part of everything, and I am here, I'm experiencing this. Whereas back then, neutrality or not feeling anything was me living inside a box with my walls up, away from harm, doing anything that I can to avoid harm, or pretending that nothing bothered me. And I think if I was to sit here and share everything that um, has changed about myself in the last 10 years, we'd be here for a really, really long time. So we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. But as I said, like, one of the biggest realizations with uncovering what resilience means to me now versus what I thought it was, because also, let's be clear, back in 2016, I hadn't even started my healing. I read a lot of books, and I tried to do some personal development, but I hadn't done any internal work. Everything was external. So, I wouldn't have even used resilient in a sentence. But one of the biggest realizations that hit me and that I've had is that while I was strong, I was a survivor, I was determined and a go getter, and I had goals and ambitions and all of that. I was so detached, insecure, and exceptionally good at avoiding emotions and pain. Exceptionally good at avoiding them. And I think through my life, and there have been so many things that I have blocked, so many things that I don't remember since my trauma. I have a lot of memories from a child, from when I was a child, but so many things, you know, nights out, people that I've been with, things that I've done, like I just don't remember. And I used to think there was something wrong with me. And, or maybe I was lying, or, I don't know. But the more people that I work with, the more that I realize that blocking, like subconscious blocking, is such a common and natural trauma response. Anyway, we're off the track again, but that's what I do, right? That's why you're here, because you want the unfiltered version of me. It's also, for reference, really hot in my office. It's like a 46-degree day where I am today, and there is no circulation in my office. Random side note, fun fact into the life of Jackie. But if you're listening to this and you're kind of like, oh, hang on, like, I think I'm resilient, but am I resilient or am I detached? Here are a few examples or ways that you can tell the difference between the two. Do you allow yourself to feel, or do you try and turn off your emotions? Resilience promotes feelings, detachment doesn't. Do you avoid certain topics, themes, or situations, or are you approaching life with open arms, prepared for anything? If you're avoiding, then you're detached. If you're open and prepared for anything, you're more resilient. Are you open to hearing and listening other points of views and perspectives, especially when it differs to yours? Or do you dig your heels in and do everything that you can to make sure that people know that you're right? Obviously, the second part of that is being detached. Do you live from a place of right or wrong? Or do you live from a place of people living their human experience, and we all have our own experience? Right and wrong is quite detached. It's also patriarchal and a whole bunch of other things, which I could go into again, but I'm not going to. Do you use times of challenge or trauma to grow as a human, or you just slot it away as another thing that happened? Move on, make no meaning of it, and act as if you're almost above it. If you're using trauma to grow, and I'm not saying like when you're in the thick of it being like, oh, this is so amazing, because no one does that, right? No one does that. But after it, if you're like, okay, this is part of my story, this is part of my journey, this is part of who I am, that's resilience. If you're like, whatever, it's done, I'm not looking at it again, it's detached, right? I mentioned briefly that patriarchy promotes detachment, avoidance, because we want this people to be a certain way and to fall into line. And I think we're slowly coming around in terms of resilience. There is a lot of work to do in a lot of other areas. But if you think about it, it's like, and I'm sure I'm really quite comfortable saying I'm sure everybody listening to this has had this happen to them, where you show emotions or you feel deeply or you're impacted by something, and someone either says to you or you know that they're thinking that you're soft or you're weak, you should toughen up, right? We've all had it. We've all had it. I remember when I when I was in the police force and I cried about the kitten. The kitten got hit by a car and it was still alive, but it was injured. And I was driving, which was like you never wanted to be the passenger because it meant you had to do all the notes. I was driving and I told my passenger, my partner, that he could drive so I could hold the cat. And I burst into tears. He's like, "Are you crying?" He's like, "You're like the toughest cunt I know." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." I'm like, "It's a kitten." And then I got back to the police station, and then the sergeant made a comment about it as well, about me showing emotion. And I was like, he's like, "Nothing bothers you." And I'm like, wow. And that was kind of a big moment for me because I was like, is that how people see me? I know that a police force is probably a really bad example because it really does promote toughness and is not good at all in any way in accepting and embracing different personalities unless they're going through a recruitment drive, in which case they have to bump up numbers. I'm going to get in a lot of trouble for saying that probably. But we've all had those situations, right? When people try and shut us down or make us feel bad for how we feel or for feeling big. And what I want to share with you is feeling big is part of healing. It is part of growth and it is part of resilience. Not feeling and not allowing yourself to process things, that's detachment. You are not going to grow as a human if you are detached. You are not going to grow as a human. You are not going to be able to bring your visions to life. You are not going to create the life that you know that you were meant for. You are not going to ever thrive in life if you remain detached. And I know I sound like I'm getting my like sassy pants on, but I kind of am, because resilience is about encompassing all of you. And you need resilience in order to bring your visions to life. You need resilience in order to thrive, both for yourself and with other people. Because the world can be very, very selfish, and selfishness isn't part of resilience. And it just frustrates the shit out of me when we think we have to be and act a certain way, when why is being ourselves not enough? Why is choosing ourselves not enough? Why are we not even allowed to choose ourselves? Why are we encouraged not to? We're encouraged not to embrace our emotions, not to feel our feelings, not to say what's on our mind, because heaven forbid, you know? Um, oh, anyway, I got off on a massive tangent there. Clearly, I'm passionate about this work. I'm very passionate about resilience. I am very passionate about doing the inner work to support yourself to thrive after trauma. And you cannot thrive coming from someone who has lived it. I have lived it. I have been it. I have done it. You cannot thrive after trauma if you are detached. You can pretend, and things can be going very well for you. Like, I'm not saying that shit's going to be bad all the time. Like, you can have a wonderful life. But if you're detached, you're not thriving. I'm probably going to lose some followers after that one. Anyway, if you are ready to truly, like, if you're done with being detached, you're sick of it, you're sick of having to feel like you have to be a certain way or be someone that you're not, and you're ready to embrace it all, you're ready to grow, you're ready to expand, you're ready to actually go, you know what? I'm so open to embracing what comes. And I know that even if shit is hard, I'm going to be a better person for it. That it is part of life's journey. I would love for you to join the Visionaries waitlist. I'm going to be opening the doors to the waitlist next week. So if you want to be in there, if you know that you want to be coached and supported and be surrounded by the most incredible humans, you need to be on the waitlist. I'm telling you right now, you need to be on that waitlist. The link is in the show notes below. And if you have any questions, if anything comes up for this, please, please always, always reach out.